Okay, once again, a very good morning to everybody. The other day, we had started with this chapter, Albert Einstein at School, from your book Snapshots, and we had studied till, I think we had done till page number 29. From 25 to 29, we have covered, and I'll just summarize the part and then we'll complete it today. And I will be asking a few questions from you. So, we had studied that even though Albert Einstein is considered to be one of the greatest scientists, one of the greatest physicists, and after Newton, if we know of any scientist, is considered to be as great as Newton. So, but there were certain factors which led to his expulsion from school. So we were studying about the young Einstein, and this extract also has been taken from the book Biography Young Einstein, which has been written by Patrick Pringle. So in this, he talks about the kind of education system that was prevalent during those days, which focused more on rote learning, which focused more on cramming than understanding the facts. Okay, so he felt that there was no need to learn the facts as such, and there was a conversation with his history teacher. The scene starts with a kind of conversation that he's having with his history teacher, and he says, "I don't see any point in learning facts. And if you want to look up for facts, if you want to know any facts, then you can always look them up in any history book." So, and he goes on to elaborate his theory of the Einstein's theory of education. And what does that focus on? He says that ideas are more important than facts. Okay. And what else does he say about it, about the kind of education system? What else does he say about battles and wars? Yes, raise your hands.
Yes, and something else. Yes, good. He says there's no point learning the facts, and he says rather than knowing when the battles took place, I would be more interested in knowing what caused those battles. Why did those battles take place in the first place? So he says that battles and wars, they only lead to death and destruction. They only lead to bloodshed. So I'm not interested in knowing when those battles took place or where those battles took place, but I am more interested in knowing what were the reasons behind those battles, behind so his teachers they felt that he should be ashamed of the fact that he's not interested in learning anything at school. And he even goes on to say that does it mean that he doesn't have any he doesn't believe in education? So he says, no, I firmly believe in education, but according to me, education is not learning facts. Okay. And he was feeling very disappointed, he was feeling very miserable, he was feeling very dejected, because not only the school atmosphere, but even his the kind of lodgings in which he was putting up, they were also not they were unhygienic. There was a lot of dirt and filth and squalor spread all around, and also the kind of violence that was prevalent there. He detested that, he hated that. Okay, this the kind of was there. Okay, and then he wanted desperately to leave the school, and he was he was on a lookout for a doctor, a kind of a doctor who would specialize in nerves, who would just write a certificate that he's suffering from nervous breakdown and it is not good for him to attend school for this and this time, for this much of time. Okay, so we had studied till this much. Dr. Ernst Whale. The name of the doctor was Ernst Whale, and he was very well known to Yuri because Yuri himself was a medical student. So he was known to quite a few medical students. And this Dr. Ernst Whale, he had just ceased to be a student, and it was just last week that he had qualified as a doctor. So he had no, and then the doctor tells him to give a treat to Yuri because he didn't demand any fees from him. So even though he didn't have much money, but still, because Yuri had helped him a lot, so he took him out to a restaurant for a meal. Okay, then we have to continue from page number 30. And he says, isn't it wonderful? He said after showing Yuri the certificate. So open page number 30. This page should be there in front of you, in front of all of you. Yes, it's fine, Yuri agreed. 6 months is a good period. So the time which doctor has written as a kind of, he prescribed 6 months rest for Albert Einstein. This way you won't actually be leaving the school. So if the worst comes to the worst, you will be able to come back and carry on for your diploma. What do you understand by this line? If the worst comes to the worst, what do you mean by this? If the worst comes to the worst, if he doesn't get admission in any of the institutions, if he doesn't get admission in any of the colleges which he desired to take admission in Italy, in Milan, so maybe if he comes back, he would be because he was not expelled from the school, so he was taking leave, and the doctor has prescribed rest to him, so he would be taken back into that school. So if things didn't work out in Italy, if things didn't work out in Milan, then he would be accommodated in the same school, so he wouldn't have to suffer much. Okay, so this is what he means to say. I'll go back. And he says, no, I'll never go back to that place, Albert assured him. I'm going to take the certificate to the head teacher. So what does he say? He says, I will never go back to that place. वो बोल रहा है कि मैं उस जगह पे वापस कभी जाऊंगा ही नहीं. ठीक है. I'll never go back to that place, Albert assured him. I'm going to take this certificate to the head teacher tomorrow, and that will be the end of it. He says, I am done with this school. I'm not going to come back, whatever happens with my life, but I will never come back to this school again. Don't forget to get a reference in writing from your mathematics teacher first, Yuri reminded him. So, how would he be able to get admission in an institute in Milan? Through that reference letter. Who would be writing that reference letter? His mathematics teacher would be writing that reference letter, because he knew it that the mathematics teacher would face no problem in giving him that reference letter, because he was so good at mathematics. Mr. Koch willingly gave Albert the reference he wanted. Who is Mr. Koch now? Yes, his mathematics teacher. So Mr. Koch willingly gave him the reference he wanted. If I say, and this is what he said, underline this. So it was not that Albert was not good at studies. You know, the kind of education that was being imparted in the school, the way education was being given, so he didn't like that. But otherwise, he excelled in science, he excelled in mathematics, but there was not much of teaching of science in his school. So he said, if I say I can't teach you anymore, and probably you'll soon be able to teach me, will that be all right? He asked. This is what he said. If I say that we are not in a position to teach you, because the kind of maths, so you're so good at maths that you would soon be able to, you are so skillful, you're so excellent in this subject that you would soon be able to teach us. That's saying too much, sir, said Albert. वो बोलता है, ये तो बहुत ज्यादा बोल रहे हो. It is only the truth, but all right, I'll put it more seriously. So he says, नहीं, but ये यही सच है, but I'm going to, I will not write it like this. I will write it, I'll put it more in a more sober words, in a more sober, serious language. It was still a glowing reference, and Mr. Koch made the point that Albert was ready immediately to enter a college or institute for the study of higher mathematics. So the kind of reference he gave, with the help of that reference, Albert would definitely get admission in a school where he would be able to study higher mathematics. I'm sorry you're leaving us, although you're wasting your time in my class, he said. वो कहते हैं, मुझे बड़ा दुख लग रहा है. I'm sorry that you're leaving us, but you are not, being of any use. We are not being of any use to you. You are wasting your time in my class. He says, it's almost the only class where I'm not wasting my time. He says, this is the only subject. Out of the subjects that are being taught in our school, this is the only subject which interests me. So this is the only class I'm interested in attending. But how did you know I'm leaving, sir? वो कहते हैं, आपको कैसे पता है कि मैं स्कूल छोड़ के जा रहा हूँ? You wouldn't have asked me for this reference otherwise. He says, you have come to me to take this reference. If you were not leaving the school, then why would you need that reference? ये reference तुम्हें इसीलिए चाहिए क्योंकि तुम स्कूल छोड़ रहे हो. Otherwise इस reference का क्या मतलब है? अभी क्या use होता? I thought you would wonder. There's nothing to wonder about, Einstein. I knew you were going to leave before you knew yourself. Underline this. So he says, I knew you were going to leave before you knew yourself. तुम्हें पता था, इससे पहले तो मुझे ही पता था that you were going to leave. Albert was puzzled. He didn't understand what the teacher meant. वो बोलता, वो क्या मतलब है? उन्होंने ऐसा क्यों बोला कि मुझसे पहले उनको पता था, इसका क्या मतलब है? But he soon found out. उनको कैसे पता था? Before he had a chance to ask for an interview with the head teacher, he was summoned to the head's room. इससे पहले कि वो appointment लेता head teacher से, principal से मिलने की, उसको खुद बुला लिया गया प्रिंसिपल ऑफिस में। ठीक है, उसने सोचा था कि मेरा टाइम वेस्ट नहीं होगा। अब मेरे पास अब उसने क्या सोचा, उसने सोचा कि चलो अच्छा है, मुझे बुला लिया, मेरा टाइम वेस्ट नहीं होगा, नहीं तो मैं अपॉइंटमेंट लेता, मुझे बैठना पड़ता। सो ही सेड इट सेव्स मी द ट्रबल ऑफ हैविंग टू वेट एन आवर और टू आउटसाइड। ठीक है, अगर मैं अपॉइंटमेंट लेके जाता फिर भी मुझे वेट करना पड़ता। ठीक है, प्रिंसिपल सर से मिलने के लिए। सो नाउ इट सेव्स, वो उसने यही सोचा सिंपली, मतलब उसने ज्यादा ध्यान नहीं दिया इस पर, मुझे बुलाया तो ठीक है, अच्छा ही है, मेरे पास सर्टिफिकेट है, मैं जाके दिखा देता हूँ। ही हार्डली बॉदर्ड टू वंडर why he had been sent for, but vaguely supposed he was to be punished again for bad work and laziness. Well, he had finished with punishments. वो कहता है कि मेरे को नहीं पता मुझे किस लिए बुलाया, पर हो सकता है कोई मतलब काम मैंने नहीं किया, या जैसे मेरे को पनिशमेंट मिलती रहती है, मे बी ही जस्ट वेगली सपोज। व्हाट डू यू अंडरस्टैंड बाय दिस टर्म वेगली? व्हाट इज वेगली? व्हाट इज वेगली? Yes, yes. So he was not sure about it, but see, he just made a guess that maybe he was caused because again the principal wanted to punish him for his laziness, for doing bad work. Well, he said, now this is the last. I won't be have to go through another punishment because I'm done with the punishments. I'm going to leave the school as it is. I am not going to punish you, the head teacher said to Albert's surprise. Your work is terrible and I'm not prepared to have you here any longer. He says, you're terrible at your work, and I cannot have you anymore in my school. I want you to leave the school now. Leave school now? He was dazed. That is what I said. You mean that I am to be expelled? कहता मुझे expel करे और मुझे निकाल रहे हो स्कूल से? You can take it that way if you wish, Einstein. The head teacher was not mincing words. What do you understand by mincing words? He was not mincing words means यस, वेरी ही वाज बीइंग वेरी स्ट्रेट फॉरवर्ड, ही वाज बीइंग वेरी क्लियर। वो कोई घुमा फिरा के बात नहीं कर रहा था, वो सीधी बात उसको बोल रहा था। द सिंपलेस्ट थिंग विल बी फॉर यू टू गो ऑफ योर ओन अकॉर्ड एंड देन द क्वेश्चन वोंट अराइज। कहते एक्सपल्शन का क्वेश्चन आएगा ही नहीं अगर तुम अपने आप ही स्कूल छोड़ के चले जाओ, अदरवाइज if you won't go then we would have to expel you. This is as simple as that. अगर खुद चले जाओगे तो expulsion का क्वेश्चन नहीं आएगा। बट what crime have I committed? वो पता है मैंने गलती क्या की है, क्या गुनाह किया है मैंने कि मुझे ऐसे निकाला जा रहा है स्कूल से? Now this is the explanation which the head teacher gives him. He says this is the reason. He says your presence in the classroom makes it impossible for the teacher to teach and for the other pupils to learn. You refuse to learn and you are in constant rebellion and no serious work can be done while you are there. ठीक है, वो कहते जब तुम क्लास में होते हो कोई टीचर पढ़ा ही नहीं सकता, दूसरे बच्चे पढ़ नहीं सकते। ठीक है, जो टीचर बोलता है तुम हमेशा उसके उलट ही करते हो, उल्टा ही सोचते हो, उल्टा ही करते हो, कोई सीरियस वर्क हो नहीं सकता। यू आर अ बॉदरेशन नॉट ओनली फॉर द टीचर but for the other pupils, other students as well. Albert felt, underline this can come as a question, this is a textbook question also. He says he felt the medical certificate almost burning a hole in his pocket. What do you understand by this? Why did he feel that the medical certificate almost burnt a hole in his pocket? Yes, because now the medical certificate that he was carrying, that he had got after so many efforts, after making his after pleasing his friend, taking it out for a meal, सब कुछ वो करने के बाद मेडिकल सर्टिफिकेट का अब कोई यूज ही नहीं था। इट वाज टोटली यूजलेस बिकॉज ही वाज आस्क्ड टू लीव द स्कूल। ठीक है, उसने मेडिकल सर्टिफिकेट का आपका फायदा ही क्या रहा? ठीक है, so it burned a hole in his pocket. He had to spend, he didn't have any money, but he had to spend the money in order to give Yuri a treat. And then he had to worry so much how he would get that medical certificate. और जब वो मिल गया तब उसका कोई फायदा ही नहीं हुआ। ठीक है, he says I was going to leave anyway, he said. तो ठीक है, मैं तो उसने फिर हेड टीचर को बोला, वो क्या कह सकता था, मेडिकल सर्टिफिकेट क्या दिखाएगा, उसका कोई फायदा नहीं, उसने सिर्फ सिंपली बोला मैं तो वैसे भी स्कूल छोड़ने ही वाला था। सो देन वी आर इन अग्रीमेंट एट लीस्ट, आइंस्टाइन द हेड सेट। चलो किसी बात के लिए तो हम अग्री करते हैं। फॉर द फर्स्ट टाइम इन आवर लाइव्स वी अग्री ऑन वन पॉइंट। यू वांट टू लीव, आई वांट यू टू लीव। ठीक है, सो वी आर इन अग्रीमेंट। फॉर अ मोमेंट एल्बर्ट वाज टेम्प्टेड टू टेल द मैन व्हाट ही थॉट ऑफ हिम एंड ऑफ हिज स्कूल। एक पल के लिए उसका मन करा मैं बता दूं उसको कि मैं प्रिंसिपल के बारे में और सारे स्कूल के बारे में क्या सोचता हूँ, बट देन ही जस्ट स्टॉप्ड हिमसेल्फ विदाउट अनदर वर्ड, होल्डिंग हिज हेड हाई, ही जस्ट स्टॉप्ड आउट। So he didn't utter any word after that, and he just moved out of the room of the principal's office with his head held high. Shut the door after you, shouted the head. But Albert just ignored him. He walked straight on out of the school where he had spent 5 miserable years without turning his head to give it a last look. He could not think of anyone he wanted to say goodbye to. कुछ कोई भी नहीं था वहां पे जिसको वो मिलना चाहता हो, सिर्फ only Yuri was there. Indeed, Yuri was almost the only person in the room. He felt like seeing before he left the town, he had come to hate almost as much as the school. जितना वो स्कूल से नफरत करता था उतना ही उस जगह से भी वो नफरत करता था. किसी को वो मिलना नहीं चाहता था except for Yuri. Elsa was back in Berlin. Who was Elsa? Who was Elsa? Yes, his cousin sister yes, his cousin, and who had told him that it is not difficult to pass in the exams. You just have to cram. You just have to cram like a parrot. Even a parrot can बार बार एक चीज आप बोलते हो तो पैरट भी याद करता है. तुम्हें भी तोते की तरह रटना है. एंड यू जस्ट हैव टू वॉमिट इट आउट ड्यूरिंग योर एग्जाम्स. उसको रिपीट कर देना है, बस इतना ही करना है. ये उसकी सिस्टर ने उसको बताया था, पर वो कहता कि आई एम नो गुड एट क्रैमिंग. ही हैड नो अदर रियल फ्रेंड्स. गुड बाय एंड गुड लक, सेड यूरी when he left. You are going to a wonderful country, I think. I hope you will be happy. Yeah, so he gave all his good wishes to Albert. अभी पता नहीं किस किस नाम से आ जाते हैं बच्चे. So this is all about this chapter. I hope you have followed. Yes, have you all followed or not? Okay, good. Let us discuss these technical questions. बाकी extra questions बाद में कर लेंगे. Yes. What do you understand of Einstein's nature from his conversations with his history teacher, his mathematics teacher, and the head teacher? So there are three parts of this question. आपने अलग-अलग बताना है. What do you understand of his nature? Looking at the conversation or thinking about the conversation that he had with his history teacher, then with his math teacher, and then with his head teacher. बताओ. Raise your hands and tell me fast. What do you understand of his nature from the kind of conversations he had with his different teachers? ठीक है, एक सम अप भी कर सकते हो आप. ठीक है, अलग अलग भी बता सकते हो. हाँ जी, बोलो. Conversation, Harshvardhan, let somebody else also respond. So what do you anybody who would like to add on to it from the kind of conversation he had with his history teacher? Okay, he's very honest, he's very straightforward, and very simply he just puts it. Yes, Mehak. What's your answer on this thing that he didn't believe in learning facts, and he's very straightforwardly he told his teacher that there's no point in learning facts. But how would you link it with his you have to draw his character sketch बनाना है ना इसके ऊपर based. तो क्या पता चलता है इससे आपको आइंस्टाइन के बारे में? हाँ, बोलो आशीष. This shows that he was very frank in admitting the fact that he was not interested in learning the facts. He was frank, he was honest, he was very straightforward. Okay, and but the history teacher took it as if that he was ungrateful and he was unashamed boy who was not listening to what the teacher said, and who the teacher could not stand him anymore. And next is then what about his conversation with his mathematics teacher? Batao. Yes, Neha. Yes, he never wasted his time. He paid a lot of attention in his mathematics class. And from the kind of conversation he had with his mathematics teacher, it comes out that he's a very intelligent boy. If the teacher says that you're wasting your time in my class because I feel that you know more than what we can teach you, that means that he was a very intelligent child. Okay, and then what else about the kind of conversation that he had with the head teacher? बताओ. Head teacher, it shows little bit of negative qualities of Albert Einstein. Can you highlight anybody else, not Joy now? हाँ जी, मैं ही बोलूँ. He was Yes, very good. So this shows that he was slightly impolite and he was slightly rude also with as far as his with the conversation with his history teacher is concerned or with the head teacher. And when the head teacher asks him to shut the door before he goes out, after he goes out, he just ignores him. So this shows that he was there's a kind of negativity is there, that he was quite adamant, and he was quite stubborn and a little bit rigid and little bit impolite also. So you can make a mention of all these also in his characteristics when you write about that. Okay, so the school system often curbs individual talents. Discuss. Batao. I think over it and start typing the answer. In the meantime, I'll take the attendance of the Hindi students first. Yes, Maitri, bolo. So the system, the kind of system that we are having, or the kind of system that was prevalent during Einstein's time, it was not such as would help the students who had special talents. For example, they would not recognize, the system doesn't recognize special talents as in the case of Einstein, because he was interested more in science and mathematics, but he had to study the kind of subjects in which he was not interested at all. He was not interested in history, but he had to cram, in order to get the diploma, he had to cram all those facts, all those dates and everything. And so therefore it kinds of the kind of system that was prevalent and that is prevalent even nowadays, it sometimes we feel that it curbs individual talents. So his mathematical, he was so good at mathematics that the teacher gave him a glowing reference, but his genius was largely in the kind of school, it was unappreciated, and it was even unnoticed even by the principal. The principal didn't know anything about his mathematical ability, his skill in that subject. So it was very difficult with such kind of an education system. It is very difficult for students like him or other students to make their mark. So that is why he was more interested in leaving the school at that stage and he was interested in pursuing his career in the kinds of subjects that he was interested in. So his individual talents, his thinking, and his everything was kind of blocked in the kind of in the system that was there. Okay, so it was system was, according to this chapter, we feel that the system was insensitive. Not only the system, but even the teachers were insensitive to his needs and the kind of limitations that he was having. Limitations means he was not interested in history, he was not interested in the kind of subjects that he was being taught in the school. So it was only Mr. Koch who understood him, and but he could not do anything to help him in that school. Okay. Next question says, how do you distinguish between information gathering and insight formation? Now, this question you have to think over it. We would be discussing it the next time we meet. Gathering. First of all, you have to find out the difference between the two, and then you have to link it with the chapter and with the education system. ठीक है, ये आपने सोचना है. इसके साथ मैं एक्स्ट्रा क्वेश्चंस भी डिस्कस करूंगी नेक्स्ट टाइम जब भी हमारी क्लास होगी. ठीक है, so let me just take your attendance.